Welcome back to another Traveling with Aspie vlogs. Hopefully you guys are actually enjoying some of the thrills and spills that I'm sharing with you, all based on my venture with FireTheLier, as we're traveling down south. So obviously some of this, as I shared, will be history based as well as activity based. So if you're into any of these, let me know, and hopefully just a good time of feedback and what have you, as we know that sometimes New Zealand and southern parts of this country have ancient history based on this, especially in some parts after my research in the South Island. Right, as we know, basically I took you down as far as I could remember from the previous video was Hokitika, showing you a few bits and pieces. So this one's the second part of Hokitika is promised. So this one's all about the Seaview Asylum, also known as the Seaview Hospital, a psychiatric hospital that's located north of Hokitika in the west coast region of the New Zealand South Island. This hospital was opened from 1872 to about 2009, and Seaview had trained psychiatric nurses and was once the town's biggest employer to date. In the 1860s, however, lunatics, or as people were known to man about lunatics as a classic definition, mentally deranged people that were there with mental illnesses or what have you. Obviously, it was not to man about that. It was actually in the rapidly growing town of Hokitika that was taken to the goal, which quickly outgrew its building. A new goal was built north of the town of Seaview Terrace, the first hospital in Hokitika, which later became Westland Hospital. Which obviously in this part of the first hospital, however, that became Westland Hospital later on, this was built to the south of the town at South Spit. In the year of 1865, however, it was able to accommodate a few psychiatric patients, but after 1867, the majority of them were sent to Sunnyside Hospital in Christchurch. In 1869, when the option to send patients to Sunnyside, however, was no longer available to those patients, were again kept in the goal until the Seaview Asylum was opened in the year of 1872. It was located north of the town, adjacent to the Hokitika Cemetery. This hospital was built by the provincial government at that year. In that year also, there was Hugh and Winifred Ribbon were the superintendents and matrons of Seaview from 1872 to about the year of 1904. Ribbon encouraged recreation programs and participation by the community in entertaining patients, so that hopefully their mental state was pretty much well established. In the early years, however, patients undertook domestic and outdoor work, including some trades. Ribbon was notable for not using restraint in patient care. He also built the cottage in 1879, which was the forerunner of the villa system adopted by other mental hospitals. However, in the 1880s to the 1890s, however, the hospital became much more custodial look and feel to it. John Downey was promoted to superintendent in 1904, and his wife served as matron. In 1905, however, the hospital was staffed by the superintendent, matron, male and female attendants, and a labourer. In 1904, Mr. Dr. Duncan Gregor, Inspector General of Hospitals and Asylums, authorised the villa hospital pattern of development at the Seaview Hospital. Dr. Herbert McAndrew was appointed medical officer in 1887, a position he held for 28 years. From 1916, Dr. Tackleman was medical officer until the appointment of Dr. H.M. Buchanan as the first medical superintendent in 1921, moving the hospital from lay to medical control. By the year of 1921 or so, when Buchanan took charge, the buildings were in a state of disrepair. His lobbying resulted in a furor in Parliament, and money was allocated to rebuild the hospital. A central services block, admission and administration blocks were built along with the villas to house patients. The new buildings, Buchanan's changes in the way the hospital was run, and the use of qualified general and psychiatric staff resulted in better therapeutic and custodial care of patients that was there at the time. Buchanan also improved the relationship with the nearby Westland Hospital and had a road built between the two institutions. During the 1920s and the years of 1930s, however, around half or more of the Seaview's patients were transfers from other mental hospitals around the country. The construction of villas increased to accommodate the intakes, and a custodial approach was taken in patient care. During and after the war, however, there was a shortage of staff, and patients undertook the work needed to maintain the hospital services. Occupational therapy for patients and building renovations were curtailed because of the shortage of staff during that time period. In 1946, there were 526 patients, of which of whom 304 of them were working around the hospital in wards, the farm, gardens, workshops, and kitchen. Patients were not remunerated for their work until the year of 1947. During the 1950s, however, patient care was more becoming curative as convulsive and drug therapies were introduced, but full adoption of these new procedures was hindered by staff shortages and finances. However, modernisation of the wards did continue, and patients lived in the open wards. In the 1950s and 60s, however, the farm and garden ceased operations due to their becoming uneconomic. Part of the hospital land had been taken over for the airport in the year of 1947 was to be built. The nurses' home was built in the year of 1939 to about 1940 to assist in the recruitment recruitment and retention of the staff that were there working at the time. Before that, nurses had lived in the wards or other buildings, surrounding buildings at that time period as well. Nursing training began at Seaview in the 1930s. It was then therefore estimated about 500 nurses had graduated from the Seaview School of Psychiatric Nursing when it closed in the year of 1992. A reunion of nurses was held in that year of 1992 as well. The Chapel of the Holy Spirit was opened in 1963 and the hospital's community centre in 1967. In 1955, however, Seaview has peaked with 549 patients. By the year of 1996, there were 100, and when the facility did decide to close the doors in 2009, it was down to 22 patients. The hospital cared for patients with intellectual disability, psychiatric and psychogeriatric conditions, and the frail elderly. This is what their main purposes were. The 3 units were closed in the 1990s. In 2002, the hospital board sold the asylum to a property developer through some buildings that were leased back into the community. Since the facility had been closed, it has been used on numerous occasions by the New Zealand Defence Force to stage urban warfare, search and rescue and public disorder exercises. So the building, as you will see obviously in one of the imagery, is a lighthouse in the view of Hokitika township from the Seaview Hill, and where this is located is on a government reserve. The land was terraced and consisted of approximately 150 acres, 61 hectares. The major buildings included a chapel, dormitories, single rooms, dining rooms and a padded cell. The Seaview Lighthouse, however, a Category 2 registered historic place erected in the year of 1879, was once scheduled for demolition, but it has now found new leases of life as an observation tower for the hospital and as a coast watch station during World War II. The lighthouse is also known as the Hokitika Lighthouse, which was restored in 2002 by Heritage Hokitika. In 2017, it was known to man a suspicious fire damaged some of the remaining buildings around the area of the Asylum building. Some were still recoverable. The land is now sparsely populated and many of the buildings are falling into disrepair, as you will see in the imagery. It was just sad, really. The swimming pool and tennis courts are abandoned but still retain key features such as the nets and diving boards. The through road, although unmaintained, is still possible from one end. The other end has been shut off as some of the land is being cleared off. Some of the buildings has also been used as hostel for long-term tenants and backpackers after closure. And also in saying this, basically, like there will be like some of the photos, obviously I noticed some will say may like basically you're warped into the year of the 1960, and then you've got the old style hospital beds complete with the partition curtains that they use. You got the complete old furniture and decorations around. Basically, you can imagine the smell of this old building. Basically, you know, someone find it as basically when you're time warping, it smells like your old grandma's farmhouse, you know. And then obviously there's a lot inside the building. If you did had a look, if they do allow it still to this day, which I don't know because I wished I could have seen it while it was down this way, was that there's the long corridors to where the showers and bathrooms were. So you get a quick glance around some of the rooms, and it was apparent that someone said it used to be some kind of nursing home and hospital, as I mentioned in the brief history. This was a complete with the hospital style beds and curtain partitions that you'll see of the imagery. It clearly closed down many years earlier, been modified or changed since the closure. We'll try and, you know, savage what's left of it to create that atmospheric ghostly feel of what it was like in those years when that hospital was actually, you know, apparent and alive with those patients. It's basically also insane this, despite that, the landlady that disappeared back into the main house, obviously for someone that visited this place, and they proceeded to go to in the fading daylight sort of thing. But the combination of the fading light, great sky, what have you got the old graveyard and old nursing home hospital added up to give that very spooky feeling setup of this Islamic hospital. On top of all that, basically, you know, as shared that some people are still living in these places regardless, you know, even though it's been known to man, you know, time period during this now, it's like a lonely feel place, you know. So obviously the building obviously makes it a fun, memorable time to basically have a look at, which, like, again, as I said, I just wish I could have went to see this, but there is a video someone has done already based on what it looks like on their tour of it in the year of, I think this one that I'm looking at of their blog was in the year of 2011. So it's many years ago as well, no, but as I said, if you want to go down to these high places, feel free to try and check it out if it's still available, but it's because some places I'm sharing with you is still worth seeing, I believe, or just try to reminisce into the history of what I'm sharing with you, and hopefully you've enjoyed this piece, and I'll be back with you shortly with some hopefully next take of our next stop. I think from memory our next stop will be either Havelock to do some sightseeing as well as also basically Nelson, so sit tight Kimberlands. I'll be back with you shortly.